It was a Wednesday in early October. London does this thing in autumn where the sky can't decide what it wants to be. That day it was somewhere between pale gray and the kind of blue that makes old buildings look like paintings. The air had that cold bite to it, the one that sneaks past your collar no matter how you adjust your scarf. Leaves from the trees along the mall were skidding across the pavement in little spirals whenever the wind picked up. I'd come to the palace that afternoon not for any particular reason. I work 3 days a week at a hotel near Victoria, and on my off days I sometimes just walk. London is good for that. It gives you something to look at whenever your thoughts get too loud. I'd stopped near the front gates to watch the crowd, the way I sometimes do. The tourists were thick that afternoon. School holidays from somewhere on the continent, I think. There were family groups with matching luggage tags, teenagers with their phones up like periscopes, older couples in waterproof jackets holding paper maps even though everyone around them was using their phones. That particular mix of people that shows up when the weather isn't quite bad enough to keep visitors away. The guards were at their posts. If you've been to Buckingham Palace, you know how they stand. It's not like watching a soldier stand at ease. These men are completely still in a way that almost looks physically impossible, like someone pressed pause on them. The tall black bearskin hats, the red tunics. The white-gloved hands gripping the rifles in exactly the same position they've held for hours. Most tourists do the usual thing. They stand next to the guards for photos. Some wave. Some try to make them blink. That's standard. The guards are trained to ignore all of it, and they do with this expression on their faces that isn't quite blank. It's more like they've gone somewhere else entirely while their body stays at the post. The guard I'm going to tell you about was stationed just to the left of the main gate. I noticed him before anything happened simply because he was younger looking than I expected. Couldn't have been more than 22, 23. Strong jaw, dark eyes that were absolutely, completely still. I'd been standing there maybe 10 minutes when the group arrived. There were 4 of them, 2 men, 2 women, American accents, broad, confident, the kind of voices that carry whether they intend them to or not. They were dressed like they were comfortable in expensive things without needing to prove it. They moved through the crowd with that particular ease of people who have done a lot of traveling and aren't impressed by much. One of the men, the louder of the two, was broad-shouldered, maybe mid-40s, in a dark green jacket. He had the look of someone who thought he was funnier than he was. You've met the type. He wasn't cruel exactly. He just thought the world was a stage, and he was always the most interesting person in his own story. They stopped near the guard. The woman next to him, she was trying to get a decent photo and kept adjusting her angle. The guard didn't move, didn't blink. She laughed a little and said something like, "He's like a statue," which honestly 100 people say the same thing every day. No harm in it. Then her companion leaned toward the guard, not in his face, but close enough to be deliberate, and said something directly to him. I couldn't hear the exact words from where I was standing, but I saw the guard's lips move, just slightly. And whatever the guard said, probably something formal, something in that clipped, precise tone they're trained to use on the rare occasions they do speak. The broad-shouldered man erupted. He laughed, threw his head back, slapped his companion on the arm, turned to the women behind him, and repeated something with an exaggerated impression of what the guard had apparently said, affecting a very stiff, posh accent in a way that was clearly meant to be ridicule, not good-natured teasing, mockery. "Did you hear that?" he was saying. "Did you hear how he said it?" And then he did the impression again, even louder this time. The people nearest to them heard. Some shifted uncomfortably. A teenage girl nearby stopped taking photos and looked over with the kind of expression teenagers get when they sense something wrong is happening but don't know what to do about it. The guard didn't move. That was the thing, he didn't move at all. His eyes stayed fixed on the middle distance. His rifle stayed perfectly still. His jaw didn't tighten. Nothing on his face changed. He just absorbed it, like the man wasn't even there. But I was watching closely, and I saw something. Just at the very edge of his right eye, the smallest thing you'd miss if you blinked, there was a flicker. Not of anger, something quieter than that. Something that looked almost like dignity being held very, very carefully in place. The group hung around longer than they should have. The man made 2 more remarks, did the accent impression one more time for his own entertainment. His companions were laughing less now. The women had moved slightly away, starting to look at the gate, pretending to be interested in something else. The kind of quiet distancing people do when the person they're with has gone a step too far. A family near me, British, I think, older couple with 2 young grandchildren, the grandfather had gone quite stiff. He wasn't looking at the group. He was looking at the guard. There was something tight around his eyes, something protective and sad at once. 2 other tourists, a young East Asian couple, had quietly stopped filming. They were just watching. The mood had changed around that guard's post. It happens like that sometimes in crowds. One person's energy can shift the whole atmosphere of a space, and suddenly 30 strangers who don't know each other are all feeling the same discomfort. The guard stood in it, still upright, present. Then something happened that nobody was expecting. A child broke away from the crowd. He was maybe 6 years old. Blonde, in a little red coat that was slightly too big for him, with a bobble hat that had fallen crooked over one ear. He'd slipped his grandmother's hand. She saw it happen and started moving toward him immediately, but the crowd was thick enough that there were 3 or 4 people between them. The boy walked directly up to the guard. He stopped right in front of him, looked up at the enormous bearskin hat with huge, serious eyes, then looked at the guard's face. And in a very solemn, very loud, small child voice, he said, "Are you all right?" Just that, nothing else. "Are you all right?" The crowd around the post went completely quiet. I don't know how else to describe it except that the noise just paused. Everyone within earshot heard those 3 words from this small boy in the red coat, and nobody moved. The guard looked down. This is the moment I will not forget for as long as I live. He looked down at the boy, and after a pause, a very brief pause that somehow felt long, he spoke. In that same precise, formal voice he'd been mocked for, but quietly, just for the boy. He said, "I'm quite all right, young man. Thank you for asking." That was it. That was all he said. And then he resumed his position, eyes forward still. The boy considered this for a second, the way small children do, with complete seriousness, like they're processing information that actually matters. Then he gave the guard one small, firm nod, as if satisfied that the report had been received, and turned around and ran back to his grandmother. She'd reached the edge of the space by then. She caught him with both arms and scooped him up against her, and over his shoulder her eyes found the guard, and she gave him a look that I don't have a single word for. It was everything and nothing. It was sorry and thank you and I see you all at once. The guard didn't acknowledge it, but I think he felt it. I know he did. Now here's the part of this story that I've thought about many times since. The broad-shouldered man in the green jacket had watched the whole thing, the boy walking up. The question, the answer, the grandmother, all of it. He'd gone quiet during it, no more impressions. No more laughter. After the grandmother carried the boy back into the crowd, there was this strange moment where the man in the green jacket was just standing there, looking at the guard. His companions weren't saying anything either. One of the women had her arms folded, not looking at him. He didn't apologize. I want to be honest about that. He didn't walk up to the guard and say he was sorry, because people like that rarely do. That's not the kind of ending real life usually gives you. But something had changed in him. You could see it. His whole frame was different, smaller somehow, without him having moved an inch. He'd been performing for an audience that had slowly, quietly turned away from him. And a 6-year-old in a red coat had done what no amount of adult disapproval had managed to do, made the mockery feel exactly like what it was. Small, unnecessary, embarrassing. He said something quiet to the woman beside him. She didn't respond warmly. They moved off through the crowd, back toward the gate, back toward the tourists and the noise and the ordinary business of the afternoon. And that was that. He was gone. I stayed a while longer. The crowd around the post gradually returned to its normal rhythm. People took photos. Kids pointed. Someone's tourist map got caught by the wind and flapped against the railing. An American couple asked each other which direction Trafalgar Square was. Normal London afternoon sounds, the distant bleat of a bus, pigeons, someone's ringtone cutting through the air. The guard stood through all of it. I found myself thinking, and I know this might sound strange, about what that job actually is. Standing still for hours, holding your face in neutral while the entire world walks past you, points at you, laughs near you, uses you as a prop in their holiday photos. Carrying the weight of ceremony and history in a bearskin hat while someone 2 feet away does an impression of your voice for laughs. And doing it anyway, staying. Not because anyone is watching in that moment, not because a supervisor is checking, but because the post is the post, and the duty is the duty, and something larger than any single afternoon holds you there. I don't know that young guard's name. I'll never know it. He doesn't know mine. But I've thought about him on days when something has bothered me, a small slight, an unfair comment, someone being needlessly unkind. And I've thought about that flicker at the corner of his eye. That smallest, briefest moment of something being held carefully in place. And the fact that he held it. The boy in the red coat, I saw him one more time before I left. He'd been set down by his grandmother and was walking alongside her holding her hand, very seriously, in the direction of the gift shop. He had a little Union Jack flag in his free hand now, waving it gently. He wasn't thinking about the guard anymore. Kids don't hold onto things the way adults do. He'd asked his question, gotten his answer, filed it away, and moved on to the next thing. But he'll carry that moment somewhere in him. Maybe not consciously, maybe not as a story he ever tells. But it's there that one afternoon when he walked up to a very still, very tall man and asked if he was all right, and the very still, very tall man said, "Thank you for asking." That's something. I walked home a different way that evening. Went along the park instead of cutting through the back streets. The sun was going down behind the trees, and everything had that amber quality, the city doing what it does in the last hour of autumn light, softening all its edges. I kept thinking about the laugh, the way it had rang out over the crowd, the way the guard had absorbed it without flinching. And I thought, that's a particular kind of strength, isn't it? Not the kind that shouts back, not the kind that punishes or retaliates or needs to prove itself. The kind that simply remains. That stands in whatever it's given and stays upright anyway. The boy understood something the man in the green jacket didn't. He understood that the person inside that uniform was a person. And that persons, sometimes, need to be asked if they're all right. And sometimes, just sometimes, the most powerful thing you can say to someone who has been mocked and ignored and reduced to a prop in someone else's entertainment is simply, "I see you." That boy in the red coat saw him. And for one brief moment, in the middle of a Wednesday afternoon, among hundreds of strangers, with the October wind pushing leaves across the pavement, that was enough.